Hello everyone. I'm going to be doing a review on a fascinating book that I just read, and it's by far the best book that I've ever read, especially in the context of adventure. Now when you're thinking about adventure, what comes to mind? You have your Robinson Crusoe, Treasure Island, Moby Dick, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Around the World in 80 Days, Kidnapped. I mean, I just mentioned some of the great classic works of Stevenson, Defoe, Verne, Melville. But the book that I'm going to be reviewing now stands out far in front of all the rest. And why? Because the books that I just mentioned, they're fiction. They never happened. But this book is reality. It happened, and it's amazing, and it's hard to even believe the things that happened in this book. And the whole story behind it is just incredible. And without further ado, the name of the book is Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing. Now, the book was published in 1959. I'm going to be doing a review on it now, so it's kind of going to be like a spoiler 43 years after its time. But if you didn't read it, of course it's going to be a spoiler. So if you didn't read the book, stop the video, read the book, and when you're done, come back and you can watch the review. So the book starts out with a great polar explorer, a man who has already explored the pole, and what he wants to do now is something even more extraordinary. Not only he wants to get to the pole, he wants to cross the continent itself. So he wants to go to the Antarctica, all right, and then he wants to cross it. He wants to cross the entire continent, which is very daring. I mean, it's daring to go there. Then after he actually gets there, he wants to cross the continent itself. And you know, this is an amazing continent. It's never the same size. It expands, it retracts because a lot of it is ice. It breaks up. There's cracks in between. I mean, the weather there is just, it's hard to describe how volatile it is. So he was a brilliant man, and very responsible. When he started out, he made sure that he was going to get the men that are required to go on this journey. So after he assembled the people that he needed, he set out from London, and he was almost there, 100 miles from where he had to go, from his destination to the Antarctica, and the ship just hit real tough resistance. I mean, he got caught in pack ice, and the pack ice started to build up. It continued to try to break out of it time and time again. And this was a real well-built ship. I mean, it was a whaler. It was built on, they mentioned in the book, really tough wood. It was meant to endure. I mean, it was called Endurance. That was the name of the ship. And it's just that the ice was so big, it was so wide, so thick, and so heavy, it just came to a point where the ship just couldn't even move. And what happened, they were just stuck, and they were hoping that there was going to be a crack. They were constantly looking for an opening, looking out, but they just couldn't find it. And they tried two ways. Of course, the ship had a steam engine. They tried to use the engine, they used the sails, they just couldn't get out of it. And eventually what happened was the ice, not only it was stuck in it, they had something else to worry about. The ice was actually strangling the ship. It was crushing the ship. It was coming from all sides and just squeezing and strangling the ship. They heard like cracking noises, and the ship was being splintered. It was just terrifying to listen to, especially when they were trying to sleep. And eventually, the ship just wasn't safe to be on anymore, and Shackleton basically gave the order to abandon ship, and they found themselves on this huge piece of ice. They called it a floe. And it was like this huge life raft, but it was a life raft with built-in trapdoors in which they didn't know which was going to open up next. And what I mean is that when they were on the ice, a crack opened up, one of the firemen fell in, and Shackleton, you know, all the great things about him, the leader that he was also a hero. I mean, he pulled the guy out in his sleeping bag. Imagine how terrifying it is. You're in the middle of your sleep, and you fall through the ice. And this just wasn't just a hole in the ice. The ice was constantly cracking. It was opening up and then closing up again. So it was, what happened was when he fell in, Shackleton just got him in time, pulled him out, and the ice snapped shut. And I just imagine, I mean, a psychological toll it would be for these people when they were trying to sleep. I mean, psychologically, what it would be like not knowing if right under you something is going to swallow you and it'll be the end of you. So, you know, they're obviously very psychologically tough to put up with what they had to put up with so far. But what eventually happened was, there were months on this ice, and eventually the ice, they couldn't stay on it anymore. I mean, it was becoming too unstable, it was starting to melt, there were just too many holes, things were cracking under them, and it was just too dangerous to stay on it. And that's what it is with the Antarctica. You have temperatures that are constantly changing from time to time, and then the ice acts accordingly. You have icebergs upending, parts of it cracking off, coming into the sea, ice building up, melting. It's really extreme. And he decided to launch the ships, and they had 3 lifeboats. And what they did was, they had a destination, and they were trying to get to land. That's what they had to do. And eventually, you know, they got into the ships and they started to sail to their destination, and they finally got to an island called Elephant Island. Now, the amazing thing was this very dangerous journey that they had. They were 7 days on the sea. They had to take whatever they can with them from the ship that they got. They improvised. I mean, these were brilliant men. They put together the stove when they were still on the ice. It was called like a blubber stove, where they actually used the blubber of penguins and seals to give them heat, and then they lived off the meat of the penguins and the seals that they killed. And they actually lived off the meat from the penguin and the seal. So they were in total survival mode. And they even put down their dogs because some of them couldn't continue with them. And of course, for food. And that's what happens in a survival situation. So this really was a survival situation. And what happened was they just put everything on those ships. And it's just amazing because these were 3 lifeboats. They were about 20 feet long. And they actually had to keep together. Imagine. And I think it was 7 days. The wind blew them off course. So they must have traveled over 100 miles from going another unintended way and eventually getting to the island. So that was a huge journey. I mean, the men were just in really bad shape. I mean, it was dangerous. Really dangerous waves on the oceans. They had whales to worry about. They could have just knocked them over easily. Massive whales coming through that area. And, you know, the salt water. I mean, they really suffered. It was quite an achievement just to get to that island. When they finally got there, I mean, that's what they considered refuge. It was a real unhospitable place, raw, uninhabited, and the sea was so tough. It was so hard to go through those seas. And they actually lost each other, and they were able to reunite, which is also pretty amazing. I was just saying the seas are so tough, is that when they got to that island, they even considered that refuge. I'm going to show you some pictures of what it looks like. This was taken during the 1960s during a voyage there. So as you can see, I mean, it was a really raw, unhospitable place. And I mentioned Robinson Crusoe before, and this is like, wow, this is so similar, because what they did was they actually took whatever rocks they could find and they built them up and made walls. And then for the roof, they took 2 boats and they upended them and they made them out of roofs on 2 sides. But still, they were being blasted by gales and storms. I mean, this is around the Antarctica. You're talking about Antarctic weather, sub-zero temperatures. And they had to make whatever shelter they possibly can, and then they put this thing together, and still the snow was coming in, water was coming in, so they put canvas on the sides. I mean, it was really remarkable how they were able to do this. And then they try to use the blubber stove to bring in, and some other things that they could do to make heat, but the smoke was building up, so they made a kind of a chimney. It was just amazing. It's like, you're thinking Robinson Crusoe, right? But this is real. That's what I was just saying. It's just amazing to read about this stuff. It's really extraordinary. But eventually, Shackleton knew, the men knew that they couldn't stay there. Rescue would not come there. I mean, it's unknown if anybody's even been there before or settled there before for any period of time. And besides, they were gone for so long. Usually when there's a polar exploration and they don't come back during a certain time, it's usually assumed that all hands are lost. And that's what people probably thought. That they knew they would have to find their way out. So Shackleton decided that he is going to part his men. He's going to take some men with him, leave some behind. The men that he felt to have the best chance to get back there were the ones that he took. And he took Crean, who was a legendary explorer himself with a lot of experience, and he took Worsley, brilliant navigator, probably one of the best of all time. And he took two other men. He took McNeish and I think it was Vincent, another sailor. So it was a total of a party of 6. And McNeish was instrumental in their survival. I mean, he made the boat seaworthy. He added to it. He built the canvas that protected the ship more to make it habitable, because they knew they were going to be on the sea for a while. It was over 800 miles away where they had to go. I mean, it was unlikely they would make it. Very unlikely. But he did his best to make it seaworthy. I mean, he worked with what he had under unbelievable conditions. And I really identify with McNeish, respect the guy because of his abilities, because, I know carpentry. You could just take ordinary pieces of wood, which may not seem much, and then turn it into something beautiful, something wondrous, by using your hand, your eye, and your mind, your coordination to create something. And he was very creative, and look what he did. And the ship launched, and they were on the sea for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks they traveled from Elephant Island all the way to South Georgia. They battled extreme thirst, hunger, extreme fatigue. Imagine trying to sleep in a little 20-foot boat, or a 22-foot boat. I mean, it's amazing. This is not a ship, it's a lifeboat. Some of the most unhospitable seas, the dreaded Drake Passage, how dangerous that place is. I mean, they had to go through this. You're talking about monster waves which hit the boat. It should have capsized it. They should have all drowned. But somehow they didn't. They actually had to stop the boat for a while because of the unbearable weather, which was battering the boat and the men. And they went onto this Floberg, as they call it. It was a huge, huge iceberg, which is very dangerous. And Shackleton didn't want to do it, but they didn't have a choice. And they were lucky that it didn't upend or crack off, and they could have just been thrown into the sea, which would have been the end of them as well. So they faced many, many, many obstacles, and extreme danger. I mean, they were suffering from saltwater boils, all kinds of problems. I mean, Shackleton himself got sick. He suffered from some kind of condition. I don't know what it was, from some kind of condition that the book mentions. And I mean, somehow, when they finally got there, the winds were just too great. And Shackleton, in the book, it says he knew the end was near. But he wouldn't let, the thing is, he wouldn't let the men know it. See, that's the thing about him. He was the leader, and he was the person that people looked up to what to do for orders. That's what happens in a leadership position. There are leaders in this world, and there are followers. There are people, and there are people that you have to look up to. And he had that ability, that skill to be a leader. And people knew that they could look up to him for what the next plan of action should be. And somehow, Worsley said it in the book, that there's a break. He waited at the helm, silent and tense, braced for the final shattering impact, when the car's bottom, that was the name of the ship they were in, would be torn out against the unseen rock. As he watched, the water streaming down his face and dripping from his beard, the sky to the east crept into view. "She's clearing it," he screamed. "She's clearing it." So they found it. They found a way to get there, and eventually they were able to beach the ship, to get it on South Georgia, and they were on land. It was just incredible. But then another journey began of survival. unlikely they will make it. Never been done before. Unfortunately, the ship landed on the south side of the island, and the whaling station is on the north side. They were lucky they made it to the south side. So what happened was they actually had to, which has never been done before, once again, never been done before. I mean, they did so many never been done before, and here's another one. They actually had to cross South Georgia, which is a grueling, grueling place. And it mentioned in the book some of the worst blizzards on Earth attacked this area, and they had to cross it, and McNeish once again to the rescue with taking screws from the ship, putting it in their shoes to help them climb some of these slopes and glaciers that were there. And he used an axe that they mentioned, I think it was a carpenter's axe, to actually help them with their climbing abilities. And they faced another real dangerous situation that could have killed them, which is to go down this very steep area, and Shackleton had to give the order that they weren't making enough, they weren't moving fast enough, and they would have froze to death, so they didn't have a choice to slide down, which could have killed them. They could have hit rocks, and somehow they all slid down together, and at the end they managed to survive, and they actually laughed amongst each other because, maybe they felt that they just cheated death, but then again, they cheated death so many other times, right? I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, so many things were thrown against them, and constantly, over and over and over again. I mean, they keep on overcoming them, and then just when they think they're out and they're safe somewhere, then they have something else in front of them. It's just really amazing. And, finally, they get to the other side, they find the whaling station, and Sorley was the person, I think, the head of the whaling station, and he couldn't believe his eyes when he asked who they were, and Shackleton said, "My name is Shackleton." And the book says that some say that he wept when he saw him because he was the one that was there when Shackleton left. And everybody knew that they were gone, they were lost, and here they are coming back, and with long hair and long beards, and they must have, their faces were black, probably from frostbite, and they mentioned the blubber stove, the blubber smoke that was soot on their faces. It was just, wow, the way they left and the way they came back, it's incredible. Who knows what was going through the mind of the head of the whaling station when he saw him. It's really incredible. So what happened was they set up this place called Pagani Camp, which was where half the party was, because Shackleton didn't take everyone when he crossed South Georgia. He left 3 men behind, and he went together with Crean and Worsley to the other side. So right away they went to the other side of South Georgia and rescued the men that they left there, who were camped over there. And they really, it seemed like a better refuge than Elephant Island was, because they mentioned they slept for 12 hours. So I would say they were in a more safe position than the men left behind, and that was the thing. You see, and that was the thing. So finally, right away, that's coming into Shackleton's mind was his men that were left at Elephant Island, and who knows what he was thinking? Did they survive or not? And he made desperate attempts over and over again to rescue those men, but it was so difficult. The ice started to form, and the seasons, and they tried to make a rescue attempt, but they were beaten back. They couldn't get through the pack ice, which shows how amazing it was that in these tiny boats that they traveled in, they actually made the entire journey. And here they were coming with much bigger, superior ships, and they couldn't even get there. But eventually they did, and miraculously, this is just amazing. They were in Elephant Island for 4 months. 4 months, those 22 men were there. And every one of them was alive. Just incredible. Everything that they went through. It's really amazing that they were able to survive all this. And what I want to add to it is that I think what you can take away from this book is inspiration, motivation, and respect for these guys, what they went through, but you could use it for yourself just to belittle the things in life, the hardships in life that you encounter, because what they went through is so much tougher, and they were able to overcome it. So imagine some of the hardships in life that you have, which you think you can't overcome. Just remember what the crew of the Endurance had to overcome, and this should really motivate you that you can overcome something if they were able to overcome the things they did. And that's what I think is important about this book, is what you could, not because it's just interesting, but it's what you can take away from it. It's the confidence that it can give you, the motivation that it can give you, the inspiration that it can give you. Everything from when the ship got stuck and started to be crushed by the ice, which could have been the end of them, and moving on to the ice floe, which could have been the end of them. Months on that ice floe. And then making that unbelievable journey, 7 days to Elephant Island in 3 boats that somehow kept together and made it there with so many things against them. It was the weather, the waves, the whales that could have knocked them over. I mean, sickness, starvation, and thirst. Remember seawater, so they had to melt water with their stove to make it and take water with them. And I mean, when they got to a glacier, they actually had to lick the glacier to suck the glacier off to get liquid into their body. It's just incredible. And then it just began, and from there they had to actually part his men, leave some behind, which must have been so difficult for him to do, and then go all the way to South Georgia, with the risk involved. I mean, it was over 800 miles. I mean, the book talks about those Norwegian sailors that really, they applauded him. And because they probably couldn't believe it. They said, how could this possibly be done? And it just never ended. From there, they had to cross the island. So everything they did, it just shows. Any hardships you have in life, if things go bad and more things go bad, you could continue to overcome them like the men of the Endurance did. It's really motivational, inspirational. It's just an amazing achievement of survival. New York Times actually, they called it one of the great adventure stories of our time. I'll do one better. I think it was one of the greatest achievements of survival in human history. I mean, I've read a lot of books, and when you read books like this, a lot of it is really fiction. Books like this could be fiction, but this is real. This really happened. I mean, the odds, the unbelievable odds were against them, and they were able to overcome it. And I also wanted to talk about some of the men. I mean, Alfred Lansing, brilliant author. I mean, he couldn't have written it better. I think he did a great job of putting everything together, and of course the character building. I mean, such remarkable men. Shackleton, the great leader that he was, and a hero, and the unbound confidence that he had, and also he was very intelligent, brilliant, and also very responsible. The way he prepared things and the decisions that he made. Great leader. And then, of course, Worsley, probably one of the most brilliant navigators of all time, is able to navigate through unbelievable circumstances and weather. And imagine traveling in the seas and finding these, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, he had to actually use his sextant and his chronometer I couldn't imagine, how difficult it was to find the places that he had to find. And he was so accurate doing it under the circumstances. I mean, it's unlikely they would have survived without him. And then, of course, McNeish. Wow. I mean, here's a guy that came through for them. He made the boat seaworthy. I mean, they couldn't have taken that boat in that ocean without the preparations that he did under unbelievable circumstances. Imagine, he didn't have power tools. Look at the conditions that he had to work under storm gales and storms and who knows, sub-zero temperatures. And he was able to make the ship quite seaworthy. You know, the canvas that he built. He was really, a remarkable craftsman. Then you have Queen, the brilliant explorer himself, contributed to to the journey, and all the other men that helped row the ship. You have the two surgeons that did an unbelievable job when they had to perform surgery on poor Blackborough, who shouldn't have been on that journey in the first place. He was a stowaway. And it's just amazing how they were able to do that surgery on his foot, and when he had the frostbite. I mean, sterilizing their tools with boiled water. They were able to work together and have the confidence that they were going to survive, and just have the will to keep on going on in such extreme circumstances. So, I mean, this is an all-time classic, and what I would like you to do is, I would appreciate if you subscribe, but more importantly, like up this video. This is a book that should be, I mean, people should be doing projects on it in school. Everyone should read this book. This book is a must-read. It's just simply incredible. It's simply amazing. And in addition to the book, there was actually a documentary done on this amazing story, a great documentary. I think there was more than one documentary done on this story. But I posted a link below the video in the description where you can see it. So that's my review on Endurance, Shackleton's incredible voyage. Please subscribe, please like up the video, and thank you for tuning in.